Not
You
so
may
different.
continue.
Mine is
Not so different.
mine is about one particular item, the relocation benefit. It's not
Catherine.
about rent control versus no rent control.
Catherine, you may start. Thanks.
Tony, you were going to remove like an extra 30% on top of the state removed one, so there would have been like less than a third people covered by rent control if you had gotten the signatures for your initiative. I also have a real problem with an obvious bias. We collected signatures of over 8,000 residents. That's more than actually elected any of you in office. Now, whether or not their signatures were completely filled out or properly recognized, or they had updated, I noticed in a sampling of my own, some people had moved within the island, whether or not the registrar is going to accept those. What I assure you is if for any reason it doesn't go through, failure is not an option, we will be back. I think it's unconscionable. You give yourselves a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling about, how do you say, the names of the two. We are rent control, rent board, and then some obscure reference to the fact that we were establishing no-fault evictions. Even in the comparison that was overhead, you don't refer to the fact that the only evictions that we would allow are those that are required by state law, that we couldn't prevent or limit those evictions. When you set out a number of these things, gosh, I'm losing my concentration, I'm so angry. There's an obvious bias here. We encounter it every time. Mayor Gilmore, in February 2013, wrote a letter to landlord for egregious rent increases 3.5 years ago. And last summer, all you could do was sort of say, okay, landlord, initiate, and you left the rack in place. Landlords would love to go back to the rack. Look at the ordinance you've put in. The average rent increases that are supposed to be agreeable, 7.9%. Well, the rack was giving them 10%. Even the California Apartment Association said, don't do double digits. You've got to accept lower, or you're going to end up with rent control. So what do? Your ordinance is failing. We've already had, of 15 evictions, and you say the money has been paid. Well, all the cost is borne by the tenants in a forced move, as well as schools, as jobs, as just about everything. The amount that you're giving, you actually take away for the very people who are going to need extra time in this market. You take away that allocation money if they're disabled, if they're seniors, if they're families with children who are going to have a very hard time finding new housing in 60 days when they first receive that shock that they have to move. You are not protecting us. You are not. And you continue to treat landlords as if it's equal, 50-50. It is not. This is the best market in 30 years for mom and pop landlords. But you throw that phrase out, and I don't know what the hell it means. There are mom and pop renters too, So we're just a small segment that have actually stayed here till 11 o'clock at night. You continually put this on the agenda and keep us late so that many have to leave and cannot stay and express their free speech. It's really unconscionable what you continue to do 3.5 years later. You really have to step up and start protecting more than half of your constituents. Do you understand what we're facing, what we're fighting for? We cannot stop. And you have responsibility that you are not meeting.